Hi, Debbie. What do you have? This is the first day of December. I can't believe it. We're almost at the end of 2023. What do you have for us today?
Well, first of all, you're right. It's hard to believe we're already to December. And as usual, I like to take and pick a topic that we can actually apply in the here and now. So today we're going to talk about triggers, and more triggers around the holidays. Um, in my practice, I typically ask whenever there's a holiday season when my clients come in, how did you do? Did you have any triggers? Anything to share with your experience, because I do see that there's a pattern. Oftentimes, clients come in reporting that they're very dysregulated because they get triggered around a specific situation during the holidays. Remember that when they are triggered, that the person ends up feeling extremely out of control. There's that limbic activation, and the problem is most oftentimes that happens because the client has not put together an intentional plan. I really work with my clients on that intentional piece because it's so very, very important. Without it, it's kind of like we don't know what's going to hit us and then we don't know what to do. So, what does it mean to be intentional? Well, to be intentional, it means that we're making deliberate choices to reflect on what's most important to us. So, it's in alignment with my goals, where I want to get to, who I want to be. I also believe that with being intentional, it can shift us into a more positive mindset. Like I said, it helps us reach recovery goals. We have more clarity in the moment when the triggers are happening and we have an intentional plan. We have the ability to stay more present, more focused, and we can commit to our recovery when we know what it is we're going to do in specific situations. As a result, there then is more purpose and meaning to our recovery as we do this more and more, and we're consistent in having an intentional plan. So, with the holidays coming up, why is it so important that the betrayed partner needs to intentionally know about the holidays and triggers? Well, remember that there is a lot of stress with the holidays. We find that different times of the year there is seasonal stress, and sometimes it's difficult to manage this stress when you're in the middle of recovering from betrayal trauma, especially in those early days, in those times when you're having a lot of grief. And holidays seem to bring up a lot of grief for the betrayed partners. Remember, the betrayed partner's window of tolerance is very narrow as they're going into the holidays. Now we add to the stress of the holidays, and so it's the perfect storm. Holidays are also linked with things like memories and traditions and special moments. And after discovery or disclosure, all of those can be distorted or destroyed. So now when I think about Christmas in the past, it doesn't have the same meaning for me. I have intrusive thoughts that bring to mind that what I thought was happening wasn't really happening in those days. So there's that heightened sense of loss, the loss of your dreams, the loss of your memories, even the loss of the future, and future holidays comes up as well. So while it's impossible to come up with a plan for every single trigger that could possibly happen, what you can do is come up with skills and tools to apply as these triggers come up. So we're going to talk a bit about that today. So I want to talk a little bit about why it's really important that the betrayed partner plans intentionally on what they're going to do with triggers. And we're going to move into how couples can work together. So I'm going to talk about a plan for the addict partners when their betrayed partner gets triggered, as well as the plan for the betrayed partner when he or she is triggered. So remember that the betrayed partner needs to prepare that in the holiday season, there can be some difficult and intense emotions that will arise unprovoked. We don't have control at times over when we're going to be triggered. So if I know I have a plan and my partner, my addict partner has a plan moving into the holidays, then there's a sense of safety. There's even a sense of empowerment. And when I do get triggered as a betrayed partner, rather than pulling away and isolating or moving forward into maybe a fit of rage, I now know some steps I can take so I can stay present in this moment when it's occurring. So it helps the betrayed partner keep on track in their recovery. I don't backslide. I don't take a few steps back and then have to recover. So there's that sense of I'm still moving forward in my recovery. I also, like I said, when we have a plan, then it can include the addict partner. It's so important that if you're in relationship with your addict partner, that this is not something you do by yourself as a betrayed partner. It's something you do together. I like to use the analogy of triggers. Triggers are very similar to a smoke alarm or a carbon monoxide detector. You know, when that alarm goes off, it's going off for a reason. So when this happens with a betrayed partner, there's typically a reason why it goes off. There's an activation that takes place of the limbic system. So there's this warning that happens. So the betrayed partner may experience certain stimuli. It could be that emotions come up that trigger me. It could be that I'm in an environment, which is I'm maybe driving down the street and I'm by, a billboard, or I see an establishment that's associated with my addict partner's addiction. It will trigger me. It could be sensory. It could be a smell. It could be a song that I hear coming on. It could be situational, which holidays are considered situational. So these stimuli can elicit a trauma response. And the betrayed partner's feelings are going to come up and set in motion with these feelings some obsessive thoughts. So with those obsessive thoughts, I'm going to move back into that limbic part of my brain and I'm going to become activated. So now I'm on high alert. My warning system is on. I want the betrayed partners to understand that exposure to these activators are not your fault. The stimuli that comes along, it's not your fault when you get triggered. It's going to happen, usually unsolicited, because with these activators that get us triggered, there's a lot of distress associated with it. You have no control over that. Now, a trigger is a reminder of that past, that hurtful past that you experienced with the addict, and it reminds you of their addictive behaviors. So oftentimes you'll notice that the trigger is always associated with something that the addict did while they were in their addiction. It's not necessarily an indicator in that moment that the addict is not experiencing sobriety, not in recovery, not doing anything wrong. So we need to also kind of keep that in mind as well. They can still come up no matter how long your addict partner has been in recovery. It can even happen 5-10 years down the road. Triggers may still happen. So that's why it's important in the early days of your recovery, you come up with a plan. The interesting thing about triggers is it is something happening in the present moment that is actually connected to and tied in to the past. So it's like I have one foot in the present and one foot in the past. So that's a very interesting thing to notice. I want you to know that triggers are a normal part of betrayal trauma recovery and the broken trust that occurs in the relationship. So when a trigger happens, it usually presents as a very strong emotional reaction. Like I said, it can be anything from the silent treatment all the way to the other end of the continuum to rage. It can spiral you instantly as a betrayed partner into these intrusive thoughts that are very scary. It can even include flashbacks. I was reading this last week where someone was describing what it felt like when you were triggered. And they said it felt like, 1,000 bees buzzing in their body. It felt like there was smoke coming out of their, ears. It felt like, their brain was scrambled all at the same time. So when I am triggered, I can have some really strong body sensations and responses. As a result, as a betrayed partner, I may go into some of that safety-seeking behavior that we talk about. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But the safety-seeking behavior with a trigger, when it's not, we don't have an intentional plan, is typically going to be more unhealthy unless we have a plan on how we're going to do it. So some triggers are easier to prepare for, but many times triggers, like I said, come unexpectedly. So I know that the addict partner may see their betrayed partner get triggered and it appears like they're bipolar or they're borderline or they're crazy. In reality, it's just that their limbic system has been activated. And at that point, their brain's telling them that they are trying to stay alive, that they're in survival. So having a plan in place of how you will respond as a couple can help you be prepared for anything that's unpredictable that comes along and anything that will arise without warning during the holiday season. So let's talk about the trigger plan for the addict. So I'm going to give you just some different ideas. We'll talk about how you can actually implement it and integrate it into your recovery and how you can work together as a couple with it. So the first thing that an addict partner needs to remember when the betrayed partner is triggered is that they must slow down. They've got to ground themselves and they need to breathe. So when your betrayed partner is triggered, the impulse for the addict partner is to become defensive and defend themselves because it can feel like they're being attacked or accused of something that they're not doing. If they respond defensively, it's going to intensify the trigger. So that's why it's so important that you work on grounding yourself. So with that, I will tell the addict partners, put your both feet on the ground, take a nice big deep breath, get into your body. So you might want to do some of those intentional breathing patterns that we talk about. I love this slow abdominal breathing. So just notice even the cool air coming in, going deep into your lungs, and notice the warm air as you come out, and take some breaths and recognize that your partner, your betrayed partner, is having just an activation of her limbic system. That's what the trigger is. You've got to prepare yourself to listen to the betrayed partner's experience that led them into the trigger. The second thing you can do is you've got to reframe what's happening. So you've got to start using this as a skill set, which means that I've got to remember that the reason my betrayed partner is triggered is not necessarily about me, the addict partner. It might be about the harm that I caused them. So we need to separate you from your actions. That's one way we can help stay out of shame, which we'll talk about in a second. So what you can do is take and look at these triggering moments as opportunities to rebuild trust. If I do it and look at it that way, rather than I'm taking it very personally, and we're going to go down a rabbit hole if I take it personally. Instead, if I look at it and go, okay, here's an opportunity for us to figure something out, to work together, to come up with a solution together, to build a foundation of trust. So you can ask yourself things like this. So what can I learn from this experience with my partner when she or he is triggered? How can I do it differently in the future for my partner? How can I support them differently? Can I somehow assure them in a different way, prior to maybe a certain situations that are the betrayed partners more likely to be triggered? Reframe the trigger that it's about what's happening now, and it's also associated with what your actions were in the past. So you need to look at it that way. It's not necessarily that you're doing something wrong presently, but it's really associated with the past. So again, betrayed partners may not have a whole lot of control over it, because if they're in a limbic activation, you're going to see them very distressed. You're going to see them with high intense emotions. Now, they may accuse you of things, and oftentimes the accusations are really unwarranted. However, if the betrayed partner is accusing you of something that you're doing in the present moment, it's very, very important that you be truthful and that you address it. So that's important to understand that, which leads to the next thing that you've got to do, which is you've got to contain your shame. This is a very crucial component. Not only during the holidays when your betrayed partner is triggered, but anytime you're in relationship with your betrayed partner. So triggers are going to stir up shame in the addict partner. And shame comes with facing the reality of the harm that you caused your betrayed partner because of your addiction. So shame is what led you into the addiction. The interesting thing is you've got to heal from some of that shame, and having a partner who's triggered is one way to apply some of the things you're learning around overcoming your shame, sitting in your shame or not going into your shame in the present moment, because addicts have a tendency to go into their shame like that. How do you know if you're in your shame? You become defensive. The minute you're defensive, the minute you want to explain yourself, you want to go into the reasons you're doing things, just know it's your shame. You have to contain it. So you have to recognize this doesn't mean I'm a bad person because my partner is experiencing this trigger. It doesn't mean I'm not doing my recovery good enough. I'm not good enough. It means that my partner is in distress. So I am not going to take it personally. I'm going to sit here and be able to listen to what my partner has to say. The ultimate goal is for the addict partner to take responsibility for what they've done, for the harm and the pain they've caused their partner. And that when your betrayed partner is triggered, it's not a threat to you. So that takes some work and it's a process. And so in the early days of your recovery as an addicted partner, it can be very hard to separate that. If that's something that you struggle with, then I recommend you get in and work with your therapist on that. The next step is you've got to be quiet and listen. So I've got to be out of my shame. That means I have to turn towards my spouse that's triggered, my partner who's been betrayed, and I have to hear what they're saying. So I have to tune in, which means I have to make eye contact. My body language needs to look like I'm open to hearing that what my partner is saying is important. I need to slow down and give them my full attention. I can't be watching and scrolling on TV while they're talking to me and not really giving them my full attention. Otherwise, they're going to be triggered even more. So you need to be fully present. You're going to want to repeat back to them the words you hear them say, because that helps them to know that you're understanding what they're saying, and it will lessen any misinterpretation, any confusion, because they can know that you're hearing exactly the words coming out of their mouth. So that's very important. It's a skill set. It's actually a pretty easy skill set. All you have to do is listen to what they're saying and repeat it back almost exactly as they said it. This helps the betrayed partner to feel heard. And also, it gives them an opportunity to clarify their perspective. It helps you understand where they're coming from. And if you listen and they feel heard and validated, it may even give you the opportunity to share your perspective as well. The next thing you have to do is you've got to validate the pain, the betrayed partner's pain. So when they're triggered, you have to connect with them by acknowledging the reality of the betrayal, the pain that they're experiencing. So you're going to want to put into your tool set some key phrases. It would be things like, of course you would feel that way during the holidays, considering all that you've been through as a result of my addiction. It makes sense why you would feel this way based on my past behaviors. You could even use empathy, which would be, that sounds very painful. If I were in your shoes, I would feel just like you do right now. I'm so sorry that you have to go through that. It just sounds really hard. The betrayed partner needs to hear those types of things when they're triggered. They don't need to hear things like, well, you just need to get over it, or how many more times you're going to get triggered over this same thing. You know, you're not doing your recovery because obviously you're still getting triggered. That's not necessarily the case. So those are not helpful ways to validate a betrayed partner's pain. Instead, you've got to use a combination of validation and empathy. Okay, the next thing you need to do, you've got to examine your own behavior and take accountability. So maybe you did do something that created that trigger. So you've got to do some self-reflection and see if there's anything that you need to take accountability for and you need to be responsible for. This is so important for rebuilding trust. Sometimes, though, like I said, the betrayed partner might be triggered by something that's not related to you. In that case, you simply just validate and express empathy. However, if it is something that you've done, maybe you've done some emotional manipulation, maybe you gaslit, maybe you promised to do things and you didn't follow through, then you need to take accountability You need to apologize. You need to let your partner know what you're going to be doing differently. How am I going to take accountability and make restitution and repair it? It's very, very important that you do that. This is one of those safeguards that you need to put in place when your partner is triggered. And that is that I always go in and say, is there any truth to what my partner's saying that I'm doing? And really step in it that way rather than feeling like you're a bad person because your partner's perceiving you or seeing you in a negative light. Oftentimes, it's not because you failed to do something, it's just because a memory's come up from the past. So you've got to keep that in mind. It's really important if you make any commitments in that moment as you work together to come up with a plan because you've taken accountability. So here's what I'm going to do to repair it, that you have to be committed, you have to be consistent, and you have to follow through on any agreements that you make. Your own actions as an addict partner can set up an environment that creates more triggers for the betrayed partner. So remember that. Next, you've got to be open and honest. Answer their questions. So if they're triggered and they've got questions, you've got to ground yourself. You've got to just see that those questions are related to the stress that the betrayed partner is currently experiencing. So just answer the questions openly and honestly without being defensive. If they say that this happened and you did this and this and this, don't say, I don't remember that, and move on. If you don't remember, it's okay to say that, but you need to add to that, I don't remember it that way. In fact, I don't remember it. But if you tell me that's how it happened, then I'm going to go with that because I most likely did that. Remember, when I'm an addict and I'm in my active addictions, my memory is not very well. It's not very good, I should say, because of the fact that I'm working out of that limbic region of my brain. I'm not connected to prefrontal. I'm not experiencing things the way I do when I'm fully grounded and connected to prefrontal cortex. So it's very, very important that you're very open and honest with whatever questions come up. The next one is show up and meet the betrayed partner's needs in the moment. So just ask your betrayed partner, is there anything that I can do for you right now that will help you feel more grounded? They may request that you create a new agreement around the trigger for the future. They might request that you just hold their hand. They might request for space and some time. Let them have that. So try to show up for them and meet the betrayed partner in the need that they have in the present moment. The next one is you've got to honor all agreements and plans that you made, especially about how you're going to handle the triggers together, because you have to show up. That's so important for the betrayed partner. So my recommendation is that in the next few days, you plan some type of a check-in. You're going to call it your planning meeting, and you're going to discuss how we're going to handle triggers that might come up around the holidays. You may know already that if you're traveling, there's going to be more triggers. You may know that if we go to a certain family party or a business dinner, there's going to be more triggers. So be clear on that. Talk about it. Look at the past. Maybe it's happened in the past and you can use that as an opportunity on how to plan for this season and for the holidays. Be clear on, if we're going to do something, what does that look like? So if you say, well, I'm going to validate you, if all of a sudden you get triggered, well, what does validate mean? The betrayed partner needs to say, well, I need to hear you say, it's okay that you're triggered. I understand why you'd be triggered. This is really hard. That's what I need to hear. So we've got to be very clear on, what does it look like when I show up for you? And in my plan, I'm going to be there to support you. Commit to the plan and follow through. I think I've said commit and follow through about 3 or 4 times now. I cannot emphasize that enough, how important that is. And then lastly, this is a lot for you as an addict partner to have to handle. It is. The responsibility in this moment really does heavily rely on you. So it's important that you reach out for support. So just like I recommend to the betrayed partners, the addict partner needs to have, I would like you to have at least 3 people you can identify, if not more, that you can reach out to via text, email, phone calls, meetings you can go to in person, your therapist, anybody you can go to who will help ground you, help you kind of reestablish that sense of security, get you out of your shame, give you the ability to express what your experience is and what you need. So find those people that are there for you. You need empathy as well. You need validation as well. You need encouragement. So please don't feel like you have to do this alone. I want you to make sure that there are people there to support you as well. Put those people in your phone. Make sure you have them, and make sure that they're at your fingertips so you can call them or text them right away when you're in that place where you're trying to support your betrayed partner who's triggered. So now the trigger plan for the partner. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to identify your potential triggers. Like I said previously, explore the past. You know what your triggers are. You know what is your kind of like your sensitive spots. Be aware of that. Identify any current triggers you're having. Anticipate any future. So in this case, I think it's smart to look at the past, look at the present, and look at the future as far as triggers go. Discuss these with your addict partner so they understand that if you drive down a certain street, I see this building there and it always triggers me. So then let's plan a different route to go from point A to point B. So it's really important. Now, when you do have a trigger, it's really important to ask yourself, as a betrayed partner, we need to understand the trigger a little bit more so that when I do go to my addict partner, I can share some things. And I came across some questions this week that I'm actually going to integrate into my own counseling. And I'm going to give these to my addict partners, my betrayed partners, and they're triggered. So when you're triggered, it's really great to understand what happens to you in that moment. So it's really important, how do I know I'm activated? How do I know when I'm starting to get activated and triggered? For some people, it might be my thoughts start getting negative. I start thinking about the past a lot. So I want those that I work with to start thinking about what leads me into being activated completely and in a big trigger. Then I need to know what's going on in my body. How does it feel in my body when I'm starting to be activated? And what emotions does all that bring about? So I go into some really distressing emotions. I need to check in with myself and I need to ask myself, okay, so what happened? What was the trigger about? So I've got to think about, was it due to some kind of stimuli that, was unprovoked? Was it due to a thought that I had? Was it due to a flashback? So was it due to maybe I saw my addict partner do something? And then how did I interpret what happened? That's very, very important. It's also important as you as a betrayed partner, you've got to know what you need. What do I need to help ground myself again? And then how can I practice self-care? What self-care can I do in response to feeling activated? So the minute you're activated, the next thing you have to do is you've got to plan how you're going to center yourself, ground yourself. And again, I recommend that you do some breathing in the moment. So slow it down. When you feel yourself getting triggered, ask yourself those questions. And then I want you to think about really tuning into your body and grounding yourself. Again, I would recommend to clients that both feet on the ground, maybe put on some essential oils so you can bring your body into smelling, use some worry stones and rub, do the 5 senses exercise, grab your first aid kit, pull the items out there. Maybe it's music that you turn to. Maybe it is an exercise that you do that you've written down step by step by step. Because when I'm in that limbic part of my brain, I oftentimes can't remember what I'm supposed to be doing to help myself in that moment. Sometimes it's listening. Some of my clients find that I listen to a podcast or a book that I find inspiring, that it's very grounding because it causes me to think and to listen to the words that are being said. So we need to be very intentional again, that when I'm triggered, not only do I recognize when I'm moving into it, I understand what's going on in the moment, and then I have a plan for what to do in the future. Very, very important. You've also got to identify who you're going to reach out to for support, and you've got to do it. So just again, like I said, for the addict partners, have your circle of support, those that you can turn to, who are a good listening ear. Like I said, I want healthy human connection. Somebody who is not going to maybe let you be a victim, but they might be very honest and even have some of those compassionate truth bombs that they kind of give you, and they help you do it in a healthy, healing way. It's a good time to have resources lined up. So know who you can turn to. Know if you need to get to a group meeting. Know that you've got to get and see your therapist on a regular basis. There needs to be a plan. I recognize that holidays get so busy, and that oftentimes what we do is our recovery work kind of falls by the wayside. My recommendation is put in your self-care. Do all of your recovery things first in your planning and fit everything else in between. Another great place to turn to is the sex and healing relationship groups. I mean, there are so many groups that you can turn to, that day. And when you're struggling, then attend as many groups that are appropriate for you. So don't just sit in the trigger. You've got to do something. And we know that as human beings, the quickest way we can regulate our emotions is by connecting with other people. So I can't emphasize that enough. So if my addict partner cannot be there for me, then I need to turn to other people. Also, I cannot expect my addict partner to be the only person I turn to for support. So it's very important that you have a support network. The next thing is you've got to be aware of your safety-seeking behaviors and avoid the impulse to move into the unhealthy safety-seeking behaviors. So how do I know if it's unhealthy? Well, if they're secretive, if you often feel shame about doing it afterwards, if you feel like you need to continue getting more information that doesn't quite satisfy you, if you feel yourself going down the rabbit hole and feeling more out of control, if it makes you feel worse than better, it's unhealthy. My recommendation is that you lean into doing self-care rather than safety seeking. Sit down and do a check-in with your addict partner. Tell them you need to do some safety seeking and come up with a healthy way to get the information that you need. So have a conversation with a support person or with your addict partner. The next thing is when you get triggered, approach your partner with a talking formula. So use that talking boundary. Be very clear. I love it. I tell my clients, go and journal it out. So here's what I saw and heard you say. Here's my story I'm in and what I thought about that. Here's how it makes me feel, which then leads to the next step, which is you've got to share what you need. Here's what I need to feel safe. So make a request for a change in the addict partner's behavior if it's needed. So if we have a safety plan and we have that we're kind of using as a reference point, we might need to add to that a little bit. We need to discuss how to do something differently and something better. So maybe you ask, hey, can we revise that? That plan? Can we come up with something to do if this comes up again? Like I said previously, even when things go bad, I like to always stop and use it as a learning opportunity. And I always ask, okay, here's where I blew it. So how can I do it differently next time? What can I learn from this? How can I create the positive outcome? So recognize if there's anything that you need to change in the moment and change it. Make sure that your self-care is a priority. Like I've said, practice it daily. It's really important that you start each day with a grounding exercise. Do your daily meditation. Routines will change, but you can do those things consistently. Make sure you're reaching out. Moving your body every day is going to help you stay far more grounded. So it's very important that you're intentional as we move into the holiday season because triggers are going to happen. It's just a fact. It's just a part of the recovery process. So in conclusion, I'm going to give you a plan of action, maybe some steps for you to take. So as a result of this webinar, I'm going to challenge you to identify your potential, triggers, both individually and as a couple. Discuss it together and come up with what are we going to do when this happens. So you're going to create that plan of action for some of the situations that you anticipate coming up, and then keep the mindset that triggers are going to happen. It doesn't mean that neither one of you are doing recovery very well. It is just going to happen. It's not an indicator that you've regressed. It is what it is. It's going to happen. And then make sure that throughout the holidays that you're attending your support groups, you're getting into your recovery groups, you are doing your therapy appointments regularly. Don't let those go. And then lastly, reach out. share with each other, identify who you're going to turn to for support, because as you do that, it is going to create more safety for both you, the addict partner, and you, the betrayed partner. So anyway, those are some ideas on triggers, what you can do, how you can work with, triggers as a couple for the coming holiday season.
Well, and I think it's so critically important to just accept that you are going to be triggered. Like we should always have a plan, because we don't know what it's going to be or when it's going to happen. I know that we can be more sensitive to them at different times. Like if I'm overstressed or, and not enough sleep or whatever, so I could have a higher sensitivity to them. But at some point, like stuff, like I shared at my 12-step group last night. I got an email from somebody, and my first response was going to be to react. And I thought, like this was very early in the morning before coffee, before I went for a run. And I thought, you should go do some self-care, which would be, coffee and a run. And then I never sent any kind of, it was just like, it wasn't that important. And I was going to get all flustered about it, and I was thinking, the busier I am, the more I have got to prioritize, the self-care, following my plan. I can't go, oh, I'll do my meditations later, or I'll do them if I get time. It's like, I have got to start and get grounded, because then I can show up differently. Otherwise, I'm causing more problems that I somehow have to find time to take care of them too. So and some of this stuff, during the holidays, there have been years when like there's other stuff going on, and I just go, like I'm not going to get everything done for the holidays like I normally do, and it's okay. You look at the list and go, that's just really not that important this year. So like trimming things back to what is manageable, and especially if you're earlier in a crisis, it's like that the bandwidth is just not there. So what do you really, really, really need to do? And be shrewd about it. Like, and I love that you talked about, have a plan, like, just have a plan. And I think it's really important, like you said, to have it written down. Like everybody's got their phones all the time. Have it in your phone so that I don't even have to like, where is it? What is it? It's on a piece of paper sitting on my desk. It's like, it's in my phone. There's the 6 things that I can do, because you talk about having a support group. Guess what? Everybody's busy this time of the year. So if you can't reach one person, you got a whole bunch of other people you can reach out to. And even the action of reaching out, can be like, okay, I'm doing what I need to do. That can be part of the plan. And I really appreciated that you said, if the plan doesn't work, it's not like throw it out and, oh, we failed. It's like, okay, we can learn from this. What parts of it worked, if any, and how can we adjust or tweak it? What modifications can we need? Nobody's going to do this 100% perfectly ever, but and each thing is like, okay, we have a plan based on what we think could happen, but we don't know. I was thinking when you were talking about, we've got one foot in the past, one foot in the present, and I was like, and sometimes I can be future tripping. Like I can be, like way out, like with the holidays, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to see, blah, 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 the holidays and all of this kind of stuff. So I could have a foot in the present and a foot in the future and still be in just as much trouble and be all triggered about that. So again, I had a family situation. It was a family event, which is always ripe with family drama, so I made a plan, and I absolutely had like plan A, B, and C and backup and support. Like I had a plan, and guess what? It was all fine. It was all fine, and actually was better than I imagined. So, but it really is key to have that plan. One thing I had a question about, and we're going to get to the question, but you talked about, and I got to find my little note here. You talked about like if an addict doesn't remember, which really happens, that at some point accept what the partner is saying, and I think a lot of that is true. I also have had addicts come to me and say, my partner really believes that this happened, and I I know addicts lie, but with all sincerity, I really believe. They're like, I think I have to just tell her I did that, even though I never did that. And I'm like, part of recovery is that we accept responsibility for what we did. And if it's within the scope of reality, I believe you. I don't remember that particular incident, or I don't remember it that way, but I believe you. And I also believe that you know, how you're feeling as a result of that. And I'm going to work really hard on not doing that. But I cannot, in my integrity, you know, take responsibility or lie about things that I didn't do, you know, just to appease someone, because that doesn't work either. So that was one point I was thinking about while you were, you know, sharing as well.
Yeah, let me address something there. We
Please.
have to show up authentically and honestly. I
Yeah.
can't emphasize that enough with both partners. And in that case, you're right. I can't just say, yeah, I did that when I don't remember. And you're right. I can validate your experience. Yes, if you say that happened, then I'm going to go with that. However, the other thing too is I would have an agreement with my partner that as information comes up and I do have more of my memory coming up, then I'm going to check in. But I'm not going to take accountability for something I don't remember doing, right? I
Right.
can't say, you know, I trust if you say that happened right now at this point, I'm going to trust that, you know, that was your experience.
Hmm.
And I think that that's far more validating than just, I don't remember that, or I
Right.
don't, that didn't happen.
Or yeah,
Mhm.
yes, not being defensive, but all, it's like that. It's
Yes.
a line of integrity. I'm going to take
Mhm.
responsibility for what I did. I hear what you're saying, and
Mhm.
that must be painful to that. I don't remember it. That may come to me at some point, or there may be, but in this moment, I don't remember. But I am going to. I'm validating your experience of this. But you know, I've had people that, you know, that my spouse wants me to put this on my 4-step, and they didn't. They really, I don't think did that particular thing. They had plenty of other things to put on it. So, you know,
Mhm.
but like, yeah, it's a fine line. So, okay. So we've got, this is a continuation question. So I'm going to read the whole thing. My original D-Day is December 18th of 2018. And my essay has disappointed me on every anniversary. He has very recent sobriety, but I've thought that before. He's here with me. Can you talk about what I should expect from him in early sobriety and what he can be intentional about to create safety for me when he's probably not in a great place himself? Well, let's just start with that and then we'll get to the next one, because that's
Okay.
a question unto itself.
Yeah, those are some really, really great questions. You're right. I'm so glad that you're aware of the fact that in the early days of an addict partner's recovery, they're just in the early stages of trying to figure out recovery themselves. And it's very important in the early days that they get into that routine, that they figure out what recovery looks like, and that they're consistent in that. And so they are going to spend some time focusing on getting into their therapist. My recommendation is that you go in at least weekly in the very beginning, every 2 weeks at the, you know, the longest, and you do that consistently. Get into a support group, get into a recovery group. All of that takes time. It takes a lot of effort. Not only that, think about that. We're also asking the addict partner, now we want you to have sobriety. So now you've got to work a sobriety plan along with implementing not only recovery work, but then recovery behaviors. There is a lot. So we as an addict partner have got to recognize that yes, they need to do their work. And sometimes for the betrayed partner, I feel more secure. Feel more grounded when I'm seeing my addict partner actually doing that work. So I think if an addict partner recognizes that, hey, part of what I'm doing is I'm showing consistency. I'm going in, I'm doing the work I should be doing. And I'm open to my betrayed partner sharing with me what they need to be seeing me do to feel safe and secure in my recovery work. So I think in the early days, if an addict partner can work on staying grounded, that when their betrayed partner comes to them, because they're in a lot of fear, you know, they have a lot of distressing emotions. If you can just kind of sit and listen to them, answer questions honestly without resistance, ask them what they need in the moment, you know, to help them feel safe, and consistently start to do their recovery work, that's a really great place for an addict to start with their betrayed partner. So again, I've got to be able to hold space and listen, even though it's hard, right? I need to turn around and ask my partner what they need for me to feel safe. And then I need to be doing my recovery work. I think those are some really great places to start. Now, it's gonna be very hard in the beginning. I don't want to tell you that that's really easy to do, because the reality is it's not. But every time, let's say you struggle, just stop and figure out, okay, how do I need to do it differently next time? What do I need? So you, as a betrayed partner, you need to kind of sit down with yourself and figure out, okay, what is it that I need for safety? So my recommendation is you also get in and you get in and see your therapist and you get into some type of a support group, because oftentimes what I see is that the betrayed partners are turning to the addict partner and only wanting the addict partner to help them heal. And that doesn't work. It just doesn't work, because remember, I've got an addict partner who's struggling with sobriety and recovery work and going to meetings and therapy and all of that, working on shame. I mean, it's complex. And now I've got a betrayed partner who says, you know, if you did this to me, you need to help me heal. And you're the only one that can help me heal. That makes it very difficult for an addict partner to get into recovery and be well rooted in it. So you, as a betrayed partner, make sure you have other support, because eventually what's going to happen is, as the addict partner gets into their recovery, they get their recovery skills and tools down, they've broken through denial, they're working on their shame's coming down, then you're going to see that together you're going to start to be able to do more and work more together. You may end up having therapeutic formal disclosure. So once you get past that, that's when I typically tell couples, okay, let's get you into couples therapy. And at that point, let's start refining, you know, what we can do to help you guys create even more safety, not only for the betrayed partner, but for the addict partner. So for each other. So those are some ideas that I have on that.
Well, and I looked at you're going on 6 years. And one of the things I read was, and he's disappointed me on every anniversary. So I can only imagine he goes into a shame spiral, and I'm not making excuses or justifying. I'm just visioning he's going into a shame spiral on that. And it is disappointing. So what Debbie was talking about, have your support network. No, he's not going to be able to show up for you. Like change it for you this year. So don't expect him to be there in some way he can't, or experience the disappointment. Just have a different plan. Know you're going to be triggered. Probably the 17th through 19th is going to be, more challenging. So have a plan, have your support network, take it off the table that he can even disappoint you on that. You have no control over him, but you can help yourself not let his inactivity or whatever, be a disappointment for you, because otherwise it'll be 6 years of disappointment. And you just don't need that. That's a long time. So she continues, my SA partner often falls asleep or gets a headache while attempting to do recovery work. I'm not sure if it's intentional or dissociating or other. How can he learn anything if he's rarely present? What should I look for as far as his behavior to know if he's ever going to stop spinning his wheels?
So I hope that your partner's aware of that, because what's very important for me as a therapist is to get my client to a place where they're aware of it. So we cannot change anything in ourselves unless we're aware of what we're doing and the behavior we have. You're right. Possibly the falling asleep, the getting headaches. If he's got sobriety and he's working on abstinence, then headaches are part of, the 90-day abstinence that he might be doing. And so that could be part of it. So educating yourself about what are some of the typical symptoms you might have if you're doing 90 days of sobriety, because you're going to have withdrawal, whether it's been, porn and masturbation or, sexual acting out. When you stop that, there's going to be a physiological response, which could contribute to the headaches. It could contribute to the dissociation. It also could be, remember, they've been using pornography and masturbation and sexual acting out as a form of dissociating. So they're no longer doing that. So now I'm trying to focus on my recovery work, and I'm working in books, or I'm, trying to do those types of things. So I fall asleep or I dissociate. And so it might appear like they're spinning their wheels. That's why I cannot emphasize enough that you can't do recovery alone. Neither one of you. You can't expect an addict to be able to really get good at recovery without somebody there to coach you. And I think that needs to be a qualified therapist. I believe in certified sex addiction therapists, CSATs, because they have a complete, framework to take you through and support you through this recovery. And that would be something that you could actually work on, go in and report to your therapist that, hey, I keep dissociating, I'm getting headaches, I'm not able to get my work done, and work in session on figuring out why that is. And then you, as the betrayed partner, can get in and see your therapist about feeling like he's spinning his wheels and what that's like for you, and how are you reacting to that, and what do you need, and how do you verbalize it and communicate it. So I think there's ways that both of you can be supported in that.
Well, and I was thinking, if I'm going to a live 12-step meeting, guess what? I'm sitting there with people. I'm not going to fall asleep. If I'm trying to do this at 10 o'clock at night, I'll be asleep. But if I'm doing even one of our drop-in groups, if you're on this now, guess what? You can be standing up. You can have this on your phone and be walking around. We have people that come to drop-in groups who are out on a walk. It's okay. If they're paying attention and listening, they're connecting, so it really is, what do I need to do? I personally love 12-step meetings at noon, because that's a good time for me to join those. And so finding things that fit into that time, not making excuses. Like if I know that that's my problem, I need to figure out, and get a headache. I'm sorry, take some Advil or whatever. And, but at some point if I've shared this a couple times with people today, nothing changes if nothing changes. And we get out of a recovery program what we put in. In the 12-step book, it talks about half measures availed us nothing. It's data for you, what his real actions are. But yeah, he's spinning his wheels. Okay.
Well,
Go ahead.
I like what you said, getting out and moving. I'm doing bilateral stimulation, and that's so good for the brain. So yes, it's going to keep me more in the present moment and able to, like you said, I think it's just so good. Do something, like you said, combine recovery work with movement. Such a great idea. Thank you for sharing that.
I often hear the essays don't know how to do some of these things, basic things that are necessary for healing the relationship, empathy, active listening, etc. But I see him display these behaviors with others. She showed empathy when I first met him. So seemingly he does know these skills. He just stops doing it with me. What is this? And that is, again, why we talk about 12-step meetings. You learn to practice that there with people that are less important. You are the primary relationship. You are the scary one. So it is harder to be vulnerable, to be willing to do that. And there's also the guilt and shame and everything else. But we can learn. But you've been at the 6 years, and he's not been in any kind of recovery. He's just kind of, he might have periods of abstinence, but he's not in any kind of recovery. Those are more advanced recovery skills.
Yep, you said it perfectly. And like you said, you've got more history, right? There's more to lose. There's more shame, because my partner, we've had, we're in this together. And so, yeah, it's easier for me to go and, be nice and have empathy for people at work, because like you said, I don't have as much to lose, and I don't have a history. I may not have resentment built up towards them. I may not have a history of, events that are adding to how I react to you. So good points.
My essay partner often doesn't honor agreements. He will say that I coerced or intimidated him into agreeing to something he didn't agree with, or use some loophole to misunderstand. How do I hold boundaries with someone like that? Boundaries are about your safety. They're, please answer, because like this one's making me really upset. It's like blame shifting at everything else. And like, this is a guy who is not in recovery at all. And, so your boundaries are for your safety. It's, but again, we get out of it what we put into it. And he's, he is in active addiction. Even if he is abstinent at times, he is absolutely in active addiction. And I'm sorry for you. Healthy boundaries for you. So please.
That's a hard one. You're right. Unless they're in active recovery, they don't honor agreements. They're not even honoring agreements with themselves. Remember that. So if I continue to have slips and I'm not choosing to do my own recovery work that I know I need to be doing, remember, the addict isn't following through on the agreements they've made with themselves as well. And so you need to find somebody who could support you and help you understand boundaries, walk you through it, teach you, assist you in creating those boundaries. hold you to accountability so that, you know, you will follow through on the boundaries. And again, like you just said, Tammy, some of the what is happening is you're being gaslit and told, oh, I didn't agree to that, you forced me into doing that. Well, remember, and somebody who's truly in recovery from their addiction, I find that they're willing to do whatever the betrayed partner needs to create safety. If they are truly in recovery, they'll do whatever it takes to help repair the relationship. You have to get to that point.
Okay, this will probably have to be the last one because so I am wondering if you know if the sadness ever goes away. 3 years past discovery, and every day of this past year, I've had moments where I just burst into tears. Just the sadness of everything I've lost overwhelms me. My life has turned out so much different than I planned.
Well, here's my recommend. I would ask you, first of all, have you done any kind of reprocessing on your trauma? Right? Maybe maybe you're more grounded. Maybe you are consistently, you know, you feel like, hey, I'm doing better than when there was first discovery or disclosure. But oftentimes we've got to go deeper. So if I've got a client that's got sadness that's coming up over and over again, I'd want to go deeper on that, figure out, okay, what triggered the sadness? What led up to it? What was it around? Can we associate it to a specific event in, you know, the betrayal trauma? And then I would do something with them like EMDR, eye movement desensitization or reprocessing, or something like accelerated resolution therapy, because oftentimes once we work on that, then you're going to find that the sadness, the grief, there's still a lot of grief there. And so I would even work in session with my clients on addressing the losses and that are associated with the grief, so we can identify that. So get some clarity on what this sadness is about, then kind of hone in on here's what it's around, and then do some reprocessing on it.
So, and I apologize. My colleague was supposed to change this when the time changed to 1:30 Pacific time, and apparently he didn't do that. I've reached out to him, but I really apologize. This is during the standard time zone, 1:30 to 2:30. During daylight savings, it's 2:30 to 3:30 Pacific time. So I apologize. I did reach out to him. This will be posted. I'm going to make sure he gets it posted right away since we didn't get to see you live. Debbie will be off on the 15th. Watch the calendar. I'm working on making sure that all of the holiday schedule is posted accurately. We're humans. We don't do it perfectly all the time. And I deeply apologize, but it was great information. I will get the video posted, so you'll be able to find it on the Seeking Integrity website. So thank you for those of you that were able to join live and ask questions. We're grateful. And I will see you soon. It'll probably be after Christmas. Yeah.
I
Okay.
know. Happy holidays, everybody.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye, Tammy.